Well, thank you, everyone. Hello, I'm Emily. Welcome to today's webinar. Today, we're tackling a challenge that many organizations face, understanding where their security weaknesses really are. So cyber threats are constantly evolving, yet many vulnerabilities remain undetected until they're exploited. Weak passwords, misconfigurations, and gaps in internal or external defenses can leave businesses exposed, often without them realizing it. So, how can you get ahead of these risks? Well, in this session, we'll explore how organizations can uncover and address hidden security gaps, from identifying weaknesses in internal and external defenses to strengthening password policies and Active Directory security. We'll also discuss how to prioritize fixes so that you can take the right steps to improve your security without getting overwhelmed, which is a big thing. So to break it all down, I'm now going to hand over to Patrick, who will walk you through the key areas of risk and how to gain real visibility into your security posture. So Patrick, over to you.
Thanks, Emily. Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name's Patrick. For those who haven't met me before, so I'm one of the consultants here at Core to Cloud. I'm involved in a lot of the security testing service with a lot of our customers at Core to Cloud. So I'll run you through the demonstration of the platform. I just want to set the scene with one or two slides, just a couple of slides, and then we'll jump over to the demo. I feel like you will probably get more insight into the platform when you see the demonstration. But what we're going to do today, we're going to discuss about how we can uncover those hidden vulnerabilities. So really a deep dive into this testing service that we provide. We'll have a look at the platform. Obviously, we'll look at the what's the biggest challenge that we see in our customers today. So my first slide is really talking about the security testing service. So this is an anonymous pen testing service that we provide to all of our customers. Really the biggest challenge that we see, I work very much in the NHS, so we work with probably in the region of 50 NHS trusts, and now we're starting to work into Scotland as well. But the biggest problem we've got, or what we see in the NHS, in the public sector, as well as the enterprise customers, is really that annual test. A lot of them are just having an annual once a year pen test, and what we're looking to do with a lot of our customers is really moving away from those drive-by once a year pen tests. Not to say that they should be scrapped. I'm not saying we take them away. I think there is definitely value in having those once a year assessments, and for accreditation and maybe auditing reasons, you might have to have a annual CREST accredited pen test. But what we're really looking at is a service that we provide, which is a continuous validation and testing of your networks. And we have worked with a lot of organizations who are doing this on a weekly, on a monthly cadence on their networks. Just on the next slide, the biggest challenge we're seeing, obviously, in these organizations is all about, do they have the costs, the budgets to actually have those pen testers coming in once a year, or do they have the cost of purchasing a testing tool? Well, with the service that we provide, you don't need to buy any service or any testing tool. We will provide that service to you. Some of the other challenges they have is really, agility. So this is really where, again, they're not operating at the speed of that business. So the business is changing dynamically. It's changing constantly, and they're not able to keep up with the changes within that organization. So again, this is where we can come in. We can actually see what systems you have, and as that's evolving and moving and changing, we can retest that very, very quickly, and we can schedule these tests as well. And these are just some of the problems that we're seeing. Confusing or unrealistic remediation tasks. We see a lot of issues with NHS trusts in particular, which is a big area where I'm working, is they have vulnerability scanners, but they're not able to understand basically what that vulnerability is affecting, or what the actual criticality of that vulnerability is. Is it actually an exploitable vulnerability, or is it just a vulnerability that they need to fix, but it's not a critical one? Well, with our testing service, we can actually show you what is critical, what is not critical, what we've been able to exploit and what you really need to fix. And so these are just some of the problems. The solution that we use in our service is called Node Zero. And really the difference here is it's an autonomous tool. So it's a SaaS-based testing tool that really helps you not only find those vulnerabilities in your network, but it works by running a penetration test against them, identifying those weak spots within your network that we can effectively exploit, and also the attackers could exploit. Now, the interesting part of this with vulnerabilities, it's not always vulnerabilities that we're able to exploit, it's misconfigurations as well. And I think that's really the key difference between a vulnerability scanner as well and what we're doing here. So not only are we finding vulnerabilities, we're finding and exploiting misconfigurations or protocols or services that are running in your network that may be not quite configured correctly, and we can use them and exploit those misconfigurations as well. So we can test everything internally, but we can also do external testing as well. As part of the service, we also do cloud services, AWS services. We also test and can do phishing simulation attacks. We can also do Azure Entra ID for people who are using any identity services. So we can test those external assets as well, those external facing issues. The idea of this is really we will find obviously the path to that exploit. So we'll give you not only the weaknesses, but how we've managed to exploit it, but we will give you proof as well. We provide proof, and I'll show you a copy of the report when we go over to the demonstration. So we provide evidence as well, how we managed to get to the crown jewels, how we managed to get to an Active Directory server and give you that full path. But not only that, we will give you obviously the fix action report on the back of that. So how we manage to exploit it, how you fix it, and how you would, we work alongside you with that remediation task as well. So we give you obviously 0 false positives. We've got a team of people here who work alongside myself, who are, pen test accredited, and we have that information, what works, what is a known exploitable vulnerability, and we give you the facts. And working with a lot of organizations, we know what works, what doesn't, etc. So again, this is just talking about the actual exploits. We can prioritize them with you. We give you the reports, fix action reports, information about what we need to fix first, and from there. Just on the actual architecture, just for the people who are not aware of the Node Zero architecture. I mentioned before that we can test internally. And the way it works internally is we have a virtual appliance internally within your infrastructure. So we can work with you to deploy that. We give you the file or the VHD file for that virtual machine. And that virtual machine is effectively only needed in an internal network when we're testing an internal network. Effectively, it's a runner within your network. So it's the device that is doing the scanning. Everything, as you can see here, is controlled via the cloud. So we make our pen tests, we create our pen tests via the cloud, and then we will control that virtual appliance within your organization. If we are testing any cloud providers, AWS, Entra ID, any of these external assets, we don't need that VM. We only need that for internal testing. And then once that VM is run, we can move that virtual machine around the network. We can move it to remote sites. We can move it to DMZs, and we can run scans from, globally. It's a fully distributed architecture. Once we finish with the scan, we just close that virtual machine down. That virtual machine can run on Hyper-V. It can run on VMware. And it can run on VirtualBox as well. So we have some sites where they have VMs dotted all globally, and they're different organizations, different offices, and they're just spinning up these VMs as and when the scans will occur. So that's something that we can also talk about. So this is just really talking about the connectivity requirements. I'm going to jump over to the demo and show you the platform in a moment. But really, we don't need to open any firewalls from that runner. It talks to the SaaS application on the standard 443 port, which is HTTPS. So we don't need to go and open firewalls. It's just standard network access. And as you can see, the specs of that virtual machine are very, very small as well. You can run it on VirtualBox, and we have some customers who don't have a VMware or Hyper-V estate. they're not running that within their organization. They can just run it on a virtual box machine. And we give you all of the instructions on how to do that. This is just really a demonstration. We'll show you the platform. Let's say any questions, please make Emily aware of any questions on the chat at the end, and we can answer any questions. I'll just switch across to my dashboard. This is the portal that you will get access to. We give you access to as well, so you can see the results of your scans. This is a demonstration platform. We've been doing some external testing and internal testing here. But the way Node Zero works is we would this is how easy it is to actually create that particular test. We would run a test or a pen test. And these are the options that we do get. I'll just talk through a few of these. We have the internal pen testing. So we're testing your Active Directory. We're testing your internal infrastructure with that internal test. We've got external pen tests. So we're testing websites. We're using things like the OWASP top 10 techniques, these external website exploits that we can try. We can also test Kubernetes and, Docker and external cloud infrastructure now, orchestration platforms. We can test against those. We can test against AWS. We can test against Entra ID. And we can also do for the internal people or the people who are, looking at auditing their internal networks. We can also do Active Directory password audits, and that's really where we look at the Active Directory domain control servers that you have internally, and we will do a crack on all of the objects, password, users within that particular Active Directory, and we'll give you a full report on the posture of that particular Active Directory. So we will tell you, for example, you've got 500 users. We've been able to crack 50% of those users and their passwords. We've been able to decipher from a hash. We've been able to get a password from that particular user. So it's a good way of seeing what the posture of your Active Directory looks like. It's a good way of doing a test against that. We can also do segmentation testing. We can do phishing testing. As I mentioned before, we can actually send in conjunction with your cyber awareness training. Maybe you're sending email or phishing tests out to your users. We have some organizations where we can actually insert a script within an email, within a phishing simulation test, send it out to 500 users and see how many of them click on the actual link, maybe give us their details, and we can then utilize those particular credentials and then go off and do a full attack on your network and maybe elevate the privileges that we're able to decipher from an email. So it's a good way of testing not only the strength of your systems, but also the strength of your users that are using the platforms. We can do some insider threat testing. This is more like a gray box test. So maybe you give us a service account, or maybe you give us a really low privilege level account, and then we can tell you exactly how high in a privilege capability we can get with that particular account, or where we can actually get through your network with that particular account. So it's a good way of testing, again, what your current users and service accounts are able to get to. An interesting one on the right hand side is this rapid response. It's a very good one. As part of the service, we also provide a full rapid response service. Now, as we're doing the testing with you, and you may be doing some of your own testing, we're able to identify what the systems, what services, what platforms you're running. So you may be running, particular firewalls like Palo Alto or Cisco or SonicWall, for example. So we're able to see obviously the landscape of what we're testing against. Now, with the rapid response, when a 0 day is introduced, or when there is a vendor 0 day or an announcement, we had a couple of weeks back with FortiGates, and we've had them with Palo Altos. Well, we can alert you immediately and say, well, we've been doing tests with you. We know you're running FortiGates, or we know you're running Palo Altos. There is a 0 day. We have it in the rapid response. You need to test it. We can do a very specific targeted test with you against that platform, and we can do it the next day. And that's one of the other beauties of having the continuous testing service, is, again, you're not waiting for a year to fix a problem or test a problem. You can get it tested, you can get it fixed, and then you get it retested again with the rapid response. So let me just show you, I'll just show you the internal test of how easy it is to set up the internal test. Remember, you've got your VM internally within your network. Everything is controlled via the dashboard here. Nothing is required on the actual VM, apart from it connecting back out to the SaaS application. This is all hosted in the UK, so we have a full UK tenant. It's full. Everything is within the UK, so we're fully in the UK governance. But we would run the test by doing an internal test. So I'll just show you how we would do that. So by clicking on internal test, we get the ability to create a template. So we can create our own templates, and we can design these templates with yourselves. So we can say, right, you want to test these specific set of servers or these particular systems. We can start creating our own templates. By default, usually on the first scan, we just leave it at default, and I'll show you what that default scan is and the configuration of that. But you can tweak and tune and create your own templates. We would give it a name, obviously the date of the tests maybe, or the company that we're working with to do the tests, and then we would give it our scope, so our IP address range. We give it we can give it a full address, or we can be very, very specific and say, I only want to test this particular subnet or this section of subnet. So we can put our scope in here. We can exclude devices. So if you've got any critical infrastructure, any devices that you want to stay away from in the hospital environment, we stay away from medical equipment, but you might want to stay away from a specific asset. This is a critical asset that you might want to avoid. Well, we can put that in the exclusion. We can put in AWS accounts. We can put in domain names. So the domain names is a very good one, because we can actually go to open source intelligence with your organization name, and then we can look for any credentials in that dark web environment. So we can go off to dark web, we can go off to chat groups, forums, and if there is anybody's account who's been compromised that is lurking in the dark web, we may be able to capture that and use that as part of the actual exploit. But we'll tell you how we got that credential, whether it was a cracked credential, whether it was a password spray, whether we got the credential from the dark web. We would tell you in the exploit exactly how we managed to get that username and get through your system. And we can put in, obviously, company names. You can have more than one domain name, more than one organization. Weak password terms. The football teams are very, very common with these weak password terms. So we put them in and just see if we get through the system with these weak password ones, or we can generate our own terms as well. There's just a couple of other things on the test, and then I'll show you the results of a test. So the tripwires, very, very useful feature. This is more like a honeypot. So we can actually, as we're doing the test, we can actually drop tripwires in these critical assets, or in these assets that we're able or weak or exploitable. We can drop a tripwire and they will stay there. The reason for this is if there was a real live adversary attack, then them tripwires would be activated, and we would be informed, or you would be informed, that this tripwire has been activated, so somebody is actually trying to get to that critical asset. So it's a good way of doing that. We go through the attack configuration with you in detail. As part of the service, we do all of this with you. So we'll decide what we want to do. So things like brute force attacks, how do we want to go? What do we want to go at? Do we want to look at your S3 buckets in Amazon AWS? Do we want to find any subdomains? We can go through data shares, and we can look at, domain admin scanning of SMB shares, etc. So it's a whole host of configuration, things that you may be running in the likes of VMware, or when we run Manage Engine here. So there is a test for Manage Engine as well on this one. I'm looking for Manage Engine somewhere. There it is, Manage Engine. So we would test that. But again, if you don't have these services, it would just ignore them. It would just go through. There's no real need to untick any of this, because what we want to do is find as much as we can, and we would, if it wasn't there or you never had that service, it would just ignore it anyway. So these are all the configurations. Then we set a duration. Again, we can schedule all of this with you, so we can set it weekly, monthly, quarterly, etc. But we typically set a duration for a Class C network, 254 hosts. we would maybe set a maximum duration of 5 hours, 6 hours. So the longer the better, but you don't have to run it for weeks. Again, you can run it for a few hours. We have some customers that just run, and we do it ourselves here at Quarter Cloud. We run our own internal tests. They run it for 2 hours every day. We have a pen test internally. We run every single day. We just have to schedule it, run it, and then we get the results. And you'd be surprised the differences from yesterday to today. May not be new impacts, but certainly new potential weaknesses, especially if your network is changing quite a lot and users are coming in and out of the network. So we can specify the maximum duration. And then we can, as I mentioned before, the runner. So this is the virtual machine. So we can very quickly select which runner. So these runners could be the virtual machines that are located in your different organizations, your different offices. These could be globally, and you can just simply select which runner you want to scan with. The New York office, I had a publishing company yesterday. We were scanning their New York office, and then we were scanning another office. So yeah, we're able to select which one we want to use, and away we go. And we run the pen test, and after the period of the duration, we would get a result. And I'll just give you a sample for those who've never seen this before of the types of results that we do get back. So based on the actual type of pen test, you can see all of these results on the left-hand side. We've got AWS, we've got Entra, we've got an internal pen test, we've got phishing, we've got external, and we've got AD password audit. So let me just show you the internal pen test results. Now, this one is actually giving us a critical overall exposure. Just refresh that again. And then, so on the right-hand side, at the end of the test, we've got a critical exposure level. So we found something really, really serious on this network. It will give us a summary of the test. This one, we ran this on May 2024. The pen test was launched from this address, and it lasted only 35 minutes before it completed. So very short pen test, but we were able to compromise a domain controller and domain admin account within that length of time. So these are the critical impacts that we were able to see. If I just scroll down a little bit more, and again, part of the service, we go into this in a lot more detail. It's just really to give you a quick understanding of what you would get as part of that service. So we would go through and we would find the impacts. The impacts are really the exploits that we found. The weaknesses are your vulnerabilities. And that's really where a vulnerability scanner would stop. They give you your weaknesses, go off and fix them. Well, we're actually showing you how we impact them weaknesses. And we've got 895 impacts. I have seen a lot of impacts in some organizations, never seen 895, but once we get the main admin, once we get the main compromise, then the world is our oyster. We can do pretty much what we want. So it wouldn't surprise me what we could find. Again, we can click into all these, and I'll show you in a moment. We got 723 credentials. We were able to get 1K of protected data items, and I'll show you these. And we were able to then compromise from getting domain admin 85 hosts on that as we move through the network. These are just TTPs, or the MITRE ATT&CK tactics, techniques, and procedures that we did or we used in this test. And the tactics, techniques, and procedures of the MITRE ATT&CK is the stuff that we do and use in this particular product. On the left-hand side, we've got the weaknesses, and then from those weaknesses, we were able to find or impact these particular hosts. So domain compromise, host compromise, critical infrastructure, sensitive data exposure, etc., etc. I will come back to that in a moment and show you that in a bit more detail. And then we will give you the systemic issues, what you need to really fix immediately, what you need to focus on, and how you need to fix that. So let's just have a look at one of the impacts really quickly. And this is the domain compromise that we were able to exploit. So I'll go into the impact. What we see here now is the score of that. So this is a critical 10. So this is something that we need to take action on pretty much immediately. This is domain compromise on this particular domain controller. The weaknesses we found and what we were able to exploit, and I'll show you these in a bit more detail. The hosts that were impacted by this particular exploit and the credentials that we were able to use. So let's just have a quick look at this one. We do show you these in criticality order. And again, you can sort these out in critical or high or low or whatever. So in domain compromise, if I just click on that one, this is where it really goes into the details of that particular domain admin compromise. It tells us what weaknesses we leveraged, a little bit of a summary. The weaknesses we leveraged, in this case, it was an insecure Java JMX service, and we were able to leverage that particular weakness. We have a narrative on the right-hand side, how we were able to leverage that particular weakness. We go down here and we show you even the attack path. So how we found that particular domain controller, the weaknesses on that particular domain controller. In this case, it was a Java service. We were able to exploit that weaknesses. We were able to load a RAT or a remote access tool on that device. And then we were able to exploit and get the database, the SAM database from that particular domain controller and find obviously credentials of those users. This has given us a bit more details about that particular weakness, but it also gives us information about the proofs of what we were able to get, what we were able to run, and that's also shown in the top here in the report, and the weaknesses and the credentials that we were able to capture, which is the domain admin. Just going back to the weaknesses, I'll just show you one more. This one was a second one, which was using the Microsoft Windows Active Directory certificate services. We were able to escalate our privilege level via a specific account. And again, this is giving us the full narrative of that, how we managed to do it, and how we managed to really get to the domain user, which is a user called BH user. So that's really, this is, again, showing you your impacts, showing you your weaknesses. So this is where sort of we get to those vulnerability side of things, LLM&R, which is a multicast name resolution protocol that we could possibly poison, or we could possibly, intercept and really have a man in the middle attack on that particular LLM&R protocol. This will tell us about the weaknesses. So this is where we start looking at how do we remediate that? How do we stop those impacts happening? Well, we go through and we work out from the scores, which is the low-hanging fruit, which is the stuff that we really want to get to. So in the conscious of times, I'll just show you the reporting that we also give you. So it's a very detailed report. There's a couple of reports. On the internal pen test, you get the reports here. If I download the report, we get an executive summary report. We get a full pen test report. We also get a segmentation report and a fixed actions report as well. So the fixed action report is really what you need to focus on in priority order, and what you need to go away with us as well and help you on that with those fixed actions. So I'll just show you the pen test report for now, and then we'll pause for questions. So this is the internal pen test report. This is 346 pages long. Don't be intimidated by the length, because there is a lot of screenshots in this report, a lot of proof, a lot of evidence. But from this particular report, what we like to do, if you have got an annual pen test or you have had a manual annual pen test, we always like to put this up against the manual pen test, not to see which is better, but really just to see, are we comparing with a manual pen test? Can we cover a lot more scope on an automated pen test? And what comes back from the manual compared to the automated pen test as well. So this has given us obviously an index, and then it will give us an executive summary. Pretty much everything that we saw in the dashboards. You will get a full detailed report about the weaknesses, what your exposure level is, the impacts that we were able to find, or really the top impacts. These are the low-hanging fruit. These are the stuff that we can actually get on with remediating, and that will show you exactly from that particular fixed actions report, by fixing A, you can't get to Z, or we can stop this particular threat or exploit happening. And again, this has given us our top weaknesses in criticality. And again, we work through this with you. The systemic issues that you've got regarding maybe credential reuse or any critical vulnerabilities, managed data, we can also show you what data we were able to access as well. So this is the report that we give you. On the other one, on the fixed actions report, is slightly different. This is talking more around 7 pages long, but this is really giving us screenshots of what we were able to find. But if I just scroll down, I'm just going to show you an example. It will give us the the criticality of a 10. So this is one of the actual exploits that we found, which is an SMB remote code execution vulnerability. It's highlighted in this particular CVE. These are the affected hosts that we were able to identify. And yeah, this is really the options that we would work through you with. So again, applying the patch to the host for a particular KB, might be a Microsoft update that you need to do. If you've already updated the machine, but that system is, again, misconfigured, or it may be running it via a group policy, then we can go into you and we can help you with the IT team with the remediation steps to actually fix that particular one. In this one, it's an option 2, which is talking about SMB version 1, which is a protocol which can be exploited, how you would do it by group policy. And we do have that. I do see that in enterprise customers, that they have a legacy application. They might need SMB version 1 running because it's a very old system. They can't replace it. But what can you do to sort of mitigate that particular risk as well? So we will go through all of this remediation steps with you and explain this. So yeah, that's the actual fixed actions report from the system. And just finally on the rapid response, I just want to point this out to you. As I said, as we are testing with you throughout the year, we will identify systems, services that you're running within your network. This one is this is on the 20th. I guess we're a few days past this one, but this was a Palo Alto Panos potential bypass vulnerability that was all in the news. There is what's called a CISA KEV, or known exploitable vulnerability. So it has been exploited. We were able to identify this particular vulnerability. The guys at Horizon, I've got a test for it, which we can very quickly test, target exactly at that particular system. And we can see that with the vendor advised on the 12th, there was a proof of concept disclosed by the third party, and it was added to the CISA KEV on the 18th. And then immediately Horizon began to create the exploit and the rapid response assessment for that particular test. And that's in the platform, and we can test that system very targeted and very direct. And we're doing that with some of our customers now. That's really it on the platform. You get full control of this. You can run your tests as well. You can run additional tests. But the way we work with the service is we have our testers with you. We schedule the tests, whether you want to do them once a quarter. Some want to do it more often than that, but typically once a quarter. And then we would build out a scope, statement of works, and we would go through that testing scenario with you. So very, very conscious of time, and I'd love to get some questions. So I will hand it back to you, Emily, for now, for any questions so far.
Thanks, Pat. Yeah, we've got a couple of questions here for you. So the first one being, once vulnerabilities are identified, how should businesses prioritize remediation so they can understand what they have to focus on first?
Okay, yeah, so absolutely. So just going back to the actual internal test. So within the test report, it will give you the criticality not only of the vulnerability, we get a full breakdown of those particular vulnerabilities, the score that Horizon will create on those weaknesses or those vulnerabilities, and we can work with you through those remediation ones. You may not always get a critical 10. You may have a very low hanging fruit criticality of say 1, but that might be an easy fix, and that might lead to something else that could be a criticality of 10. So we would always, well, first of all, look at the low hanging fruit, but also the critical ones. But these would all be given to you in the report, not only the fixed action report, but also the pen test report as well.
Fabulous, thank you. And the next question that we've got is, how can we trial the solution in our own environment before we purchase?
Okay. So yeah, so what we do with any customer, and again, it's a great opportunity if you're doing a manual once a year pen test. So we offer a completely free, we call it a 1-day challenge. So it's a 1-day, we help you spin up the VM, we run a test, we show you the value of the product, completely free. And the idea is we'll target a specific network. We'll give you a full report, which you're able to keep, of not only your weaknesses, but also the things that we were able to exploit. So we can do a one-day challenge with you. And I would, if you have the personnel to help us with that and you're happy to do it, more than happy. Myself, my colleagues, we can run a one day free of charge, completely no obligation, and to see how it would perform on your own network, because the proof is in the pudding, really. But yes.
Fab, thank you. And I suppose the final question for today, and obviously, please feel free if you have any more questions to reach out to us directly. The last one being, does the product also cover non-Windows environments?
Yes, it does. Absolutely. And this is one of the beauties of the product. So it's very, very strong in Windows, Active Directory, internal testing, etc., etc. But we also have some customers. We had one customer, an insurance company. They had absolutely zero Windows operating systems within their organization. Their IT manager was very, very against having Windows. He was running Linux throughout the organization. So so we will test against Linux systems. It will test, as we saw on the rapid response, it will test against firewalls, switches. We found issues with Cisco recently and some of their GUIs that were running on routers. So not only Windows environment, this can be tested against any platform. Linux also does, obviously, AWS, cloud-based platforms as well, Entra, Azure, and Kubernetes. So absolutely more than one.
Thank you so much, Pat, for such a comprehensive go through of the platform and the service that Quarter Cloud offers today. If you do need anything from us, please feel free to drop us a message, whether that be on LinkedIn or via email. We're here to help whenever. And thank you for your time, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.